gave it some jandle. And Scott McLaughlin is on the pole position for tomorrow's St. Petersburg Grand Prix. It was a bit controversial today. There were some incidents and accidents, and we will be talking about all of it. Let's get into it. Welcome back to St. Petersburg, and we finally had some real results today. The testing, the practice, it's all over. Qualifying for the first race of the year, and it was Team Penske that struck first blood. We'll be talking about that as well as going through the starting grid, and we'll have some driver analysis from Indy Pro 2000 driver Braden Eves later in this video. So one of the major factors, and it's not just because the title sponsor of this race is, well, Firestone, but on a street circuit, Firestone and their tires are a key aspect of the show. So we actually had the opportunity to speak to some key figures at Firestone, and I think there's some interesting insight for what to expect tomorrow. There's a big entertainment component that the tires bring now with the red and black wall tires, the soft and hard compound. What is it like? What kind of a challenge is that like for you guys to strike that balance where obviously you want two safe tires, but you also want that performance gap to be wide so that we have a good race and something to talk about?
Yeah, certainly safety is number one. Nothing else compares to that. But we want to make sure we have a consistent tire. Then we look at how different can we get this primary and alternate to be. So we still have a primary tire that's consistent, have that alternate tire that drops off. If you go too far outside that, then the tires start to not perform as well. So having that key difference. And then the other challenge is we hear from our drivers, let's have the least number of specs. So I want to use this tire at the most number of places. I want to have that same street course primary compound, whether we have a low surface track like Detroit or a higher surface track like here at St. Petersburg. So we're designing those primary and alternate tires to be different enough but still perform at all of our street course venues just as well, and yet maintain that larger gap. So that's always an engineering problem that we're trying to solve. And I think our engineers and our chemists and compounders do a phenomenal job coming up with that balance between here's a great performing tire and here's something that drops off enough.
Another thing that everybody was really into and interested yesterday were the driver interviews. Now, obviously, I showed you some of the interviews or some of the question or the answer to the one question, which was, what will you feel good about going home as a result at St. Pete? Well, how about we just show you some more interesting questions that I was able to ask some of the drivers at yesterday's bullpen, and hopefully it'll give you guys some insight into what the drivers and how the drivers are going to perform tomorrow. So, as a team, what would you say your biggest step forward has been from the end of last year to this season? What's the biggest step in the offseason?
Well, it's still keeping understanding what I need from the car. Since the times that I ran with IndyCar, without the aero scream and different approach, the partnership with Andretti Autosport also helps because we understanding the communication with the engineer. All of this is just getting more tight. They know what I like, or starting knowing what I like. I starting knowing what it feels, and all of that. Sometimes for some people it's quicker. Some other drivers takes a little longer. Right now, I think we're in the middle.
And that's something that's interesting. You mentioned the Andretti Autosport partnership. Number one, it's got to be a bit weird to be working with those guys after competing with them for so long, but so many people talk about how strong that damper program is, particularly here on these street circuits. What has that been like, and what is that difference as a driver versus what you were used to at Team Penske?
Well, that's the difference. Sometimes the driver, it's difficult. They don't show, even when we're Team Penske, they don't tell you this is what's happening. They're just like, shock number one, shocker number two, and what do you like? I was like, well, this is it. That feels better. And it's pretty much the same way with Andretti Autosport. However, you have more information because you have more drivers. So when you're talking about, okay, different styles of turning the corners and things like that, helps so much. You kind of like, all right, if they didn't like it, I know he's my style, I'm not even going to waste any time. So those are the things that really help us to get quicker to the ideal setup.
The technical partnership between you guys and Andretti Autosport, very different obviously from what you're used to at Team Penske. What are the differences for someone who kind of isn't in those engineering meetings? What is the difference between a Team Penske program versus an Andretti program?
Well, there's a lot of things I can't tell you.
Oh, come on, tell me. No.
But at Team Penske was awesome. We everything was fully open, so any information I could get was there to be read. So that worked really well for sure. Obviously, at Shank Racing, we're trying to do the same thing. We're trying to create that emulation. We're trying to make sure Elio and I can share our information as much as possible. You know, racing is all about communication in the end. It's a team. It's really a team sport. People don't believe it, but it's not just the driver steering the car. It's the mechanics making sure that everything is bolted in well together. The strategists making sure that, we use the right amount of fuel at the right time and use the right tire at the right time and go on and win the race. There's a lot that goes into it, and the goal for us is to work together and make the team the best we can.
So, a rookie driver, I know you've got a lot of experience, and a lot of people have tagged you as really a great prospect in global motorsport. But you're a rookie with a one-car team in IndyCar where you're going up against 4 and sometimes 5-car teams with a lot of data, a lot of development. What is it like to take on that challenge to not only be the new driver in the team, but the lead driver in the team and the lead on development?
Yeah, it's a big challenge, a big ask, not easy as well. We have a lot of work to do and have done a lot of work over the winter from the races we started at. But that's what I'm in, you've got to do it, we've got to make the most out of it, see what results we can get. Of course, teams like Andretti and Ganassi, when we can change one thing in a session, they can change 5 things because they got 5 cars to do it. You're up against it for sure, but it's life, it's how we are, so the better we do, I think it's even more of a bonus in that aspect of what we can achieve. So the reference is a bit unknown going into this weekend, even for me. I don't know what to really expect, but if we can break into even the top 15 and work from there, I think that's a promising start.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but this season it's same car, same crew, everything the same all season. Has that ever happened for you before?
Yeah, but it hasn't been since 2017. And I was a whole different person then. I hadn't even done reality television yet, so it's it's kind of wild to think about. I was an entirely different human, like literally. So I've learned a lot. I didn't even have a beard then. Didn't have a mullet either, obviously. So there's a lot that has changed, and it's good. It's just nice to be able to be back here. And everyone said that when you turn 30, things start going a lot better, and so far they're not wrong.
So you made some great strides at the end of last year, particularly on the street circuits. I thought your performance at Long Beach was one of the most impressive things I've seen out of you so far in IndyCar. How are you feeling confidence-wise coming into St. Pete, a track that you have already seen before?
Yeah, I feel like, I'm so early into my open wheel experience that every time I'm on track, there's a noticeable difference that comes out of it. It's hard to say, but I've only had 12 open wheel races in my life. I've no junior formula experience, nothing. It's all been these big, heavy stock cars. So it's been a bit more challenging than I thought, but at the same time, the way last year ended gave me a lot of confidence about heading into 22, and excited to be here. And I've already noticed that my Sebring test, my prep in the sim for this weekend's race, we have data to look at and lap times to look at to see my improvement, and I'm definitely trending in the right way.
So obviously we had qualifying today, and we also have qualifying results. So let's take a look at the starting lineup for the Grand Prix of St. Petersburg. Scott McLaughlin took not a shocking pole position, I would say, but it seems like he's finally truly established himself in IndyCar as a contender. Will Power, an all-Penske lockout of the front row. Will Power was so fast, and he is so fast on these street circuits, one of the best to ever do it. Colton Herta and Rinus VeeKay, young money, cash money in the second row with Herta and VeeKay. VeeKay actually redid his entire setup in the sim over the offseason. Row number 3, Romain Grosjean, who's been so fast throughout the weekend, but obviously had a little bit of an oopsie in practice, which we will be talking about later. Simon Pagenaud completing the Fast 6 for Shank Racing. Remember, that team has Andretti Autosport parts. Scott Dixon and Marcus Ericsson, a lockout for Ganassi. Then you've got Joseph Newgarden and Alex Palou, the series champion. A little bit further back in the field than you might expect, but of course he did also have a crash in what was a very much a demolition derby session earlier today. Graham Rahal and Kyle Kirkwood, All-American row 6 there. Kyle Kirkwood been so impressive for A.J. Foyt. And speaking of impressive for A.J. Foyt, Alexander Rossi on the inside of the row, but Dalton Kellett on the outside in the 59-second bracket, 14th on the grid. Fantastic result for him. Christian Lundgaard and Pato Award the fastest McLaren in the field. Elio Castroneves for Meyer Shank Racing, not the qualifying certainly he would have expected. Devlin DeFrancesco for Andretti Autosport, the rookie. Speaking of rookies, Callum Ilott alongside of Connor Daly returning to Ed Carpenter Racing. Then you've got the second of the Arrow McLaren SP drivers with Felix Rosenquist. Takuma Sato recovering from that accident with Romain Grosjean in the morning. Jack Harvey and Dave Malukas. And in the final row, shotgun on the field, Tatiana Calderon and Jimmy the Juggernaut Johnson, which, he was not, unfortunately, able to really get a good lap time whatsoever. So, for the analysis portion of this video, we like to bring in pro drivers because, quite frankly, they do it, and in some ways, actually a lot of ways, they're smarter than me. Braden Eves, Indy Pro 2000 driver. First of all, let's talk about your weekend thus far. It wasn't a win, but tell me how you did.
Yeah, I thought it was a really good weekend overall. Ended up with my first podium of the year in the second event here. A little bit of a tough qualifying. Red flag kind of caught us out. We went in for our pit stop for our second set of tires a little bit late. So that hurt us a little bit, but in both the races I was moving forward. Really good pace, super happy with the car, and obviously good points here. The way the qualifying procedure and the starting lineups were put together this weekend was a little bit out of the norm, so the field was a little bit scattered up, and I was honestly one of the only two drivers that had consistent results across the two races. So really happy with the weekend, and it's just good to be back in the streets of St. Petersburg.
And he's only 9 points out of the championship lead, driving for Jay Howard Development. But let's talk about IndyCar here, because Scott McLaughlin on the pole. Now, certainly, I think we all expected, because he was so fast. Oh, God, what was that, 3 years ago now when he went to Circuit of the Americas for his very first test with Team Penske after coming over from the V8 Supercar Series. But it seems like things have finally clicked for Scott McLaughlin. What's your analysis of Scott McLaughlin's driving and how he's progressed?
Yeah, I mean, he's just a very experienced driver. Obviously, maybe not so much in the open wheel categories, but obviously lots of experience in the V8 Supercars and around places like Bathurst, which quite honestly make places like this seem quite easy, especially in a car that's got a lot more grip. So I think somebody like that's been done so well in the past at circuits like Bathurst and other street circuits, just have a lot of experience, got to be comfortable with the walls, and obviously that was we saw that today.
Yeah, that's kind of funny how, I spoke to a lot of the European guys like Lundgaard and Ilott, and they always come over here and they say, wow, our street circuits are so tame compared to the United States ones. But I think we in the U.S. kind of look at those Australian street circuits like, oh my God, what are you guys doing? So obviously we all kind of, I think, I said kind of going into this thing, I thought the big, guys to look out for were going to be Andretti. All 6 cars, you got the 4 true factory, I guess we want to call them, Andretti Autosport cars, but also the Meyer Shank Racing cars. They were quick, but they weren't outright quick. It seems like Team Penske kind of pulled one over on everybody with Will and McLaughlin. But you seem to think that something else is going to happen in the race. It won't be Team Penske dominant from your perspective, right?
Yeah, I see it. Obviously I expected Colton to be a little bit quicker than he was. Obviously Will Power is always going to be in the top 3 around here in qualifying, so no surprises there. Obviously a shock performance from McLaughlin. I mean, he was really quick in that second practice, so I think the people that were watching that weren't super surprised, but Penske definitely figured something out for the 1-lap pace here. Obviously I was just hearing some of the drivers talk about some of the drivability things that they had complained about in the past, which just some of the throttle mapping and just the torque delivery of the engine. So it seems like they've sorted out a lot of that stuff, and around a street circuit like this, where maybe drivability is a bigger factor in the past, is a bit closer between the engine manufacturers. So really interesting there. I would say, as far as my race predictions, I expect the Andretti cars to still be strong. They're always quick here in the race. Interesting. I think we have to watch out for Simon Pagenaud. Obviously, the team supports me, Meyer Shank Racing, so I'm always watching them closely.
So he's biased, is what we're saying.
A little bit biased, obviously, but I think it was a little bit interesting. I thought I would see a little bit more pace out of him. So, you and I were chatting a little bit about maybe potentially some strategy going on there. Who knows? But, obviously, as well, Rinus VK, I'm interested to see how he does. He qualified well. We'll see if we can carry it over into the race, because not fully convinced that they'll have as good a race car as they had a quali car, but yeah.
That was an interesting thing about VK, is that I got to speak to him kind of briefly as we were walking into the track the other day, and he said that he spent like the entire offseason completely rebuilding all their setups. So it doesn't really surprise me that VK is as quick as he is, because he's essentially developed the entire car going in here. But I think you're right. Defending winner Colton Herta, over the course of the black tire stints we saw in qualifying, practice, he has been consistently the fastest car. I think you're right. One lap pace, red tires, it seems like the Penske cars are way above everybody. I mean, we saw it in the morning session with McLaughlin being the only driver to get under that 59-second barrier, which, until this morning was the track record here. But it was interesting to hear in the post-race press conference where we had McLaughlin and we had Power and we had Grosjean. They were all talking like the black tires are really going to be the preferred tires tomorrow. And I think the strategy is really going to be try to get off the reds as quickly as possible, or get that stint out of the way as quickly as possible, and get onto the black tires for the duration, because I guess the DEG with the red tires, they're obviously as quick as they've ever been, because again, we're setting track records. But it seems like the black tires are what you're going to want to be on, and that's where the Andretti Autosport cars have been so quick. So is there anybody else maybe you think could surprise? I know you got one name, and perhaps it's got the 14 written on it. Anybody else you think, or just Kirkwood?
I think we definitely have to look out for Kirkwood. He's just, he's a driver that's always been kind of one step ahead of me on the road to Indy, so I've always obviously followed him because of that. Obviously his road to Indy results are pretty much the best ever by far. So I'm really interested to see. Ended up with AJ Foyt Racing this year, and his pace has been very, very impressive so far. Seemed like he had a little bit of a mistake there in quali, so his time in the Fast 12 wasn't as good as maybe I thought, but I'm interested to see how he does in the race for sure. Let's see, who else?
I'll give you a name. I thought Callum Ilott has really improved a tremendous amount. Again, that's one of the biggest. I think that's one of the guys with the biggest challenge, I should say. A rookie on a one-car team in IndyCar, and a team that doesn't have a lot of experience. I mean, Juncos, we've seen they're giant killers, particularly at the Indianapolis 500. But the fact that he's sitting 19th, but he out-qualified a lot of people that I otherwise would have thought he wouldn't have been able to out-qualify. And I spoke to one team that was qualifying toward the back. They might be orange, I don't know. But one of the things that they said is that tomorrow's race is really going to be a race of attrition. There's going to be a lot of cars falling out of this race, a lot of crashes, as we saw in practice. So I think the big key really is going to be survival tomorrow for those guys that are maybe behind the Hertas, behind the Powers. I mean, I'm sure you know it. You made up a few positions, I think, this weekend from guys crashing out. So you know what that's like. How does a driver stay focused? Because I know that's one thing, both of us looking at Herta, one of the things he had trouble with last year was finishing races. What do you have to do to remain focused in that cockpit on lap 97, 98, 99 to ensure you win this thing?
Yeah, it's always just about not asking too much of the car. It's always about, going to that fine line but not overstepping it. And a lot of people will try to treat the race as just every lap is a qualifying lap, and they'll do 10 corners brilliantly and make one mistake, and then all that time is gone. So we've seen crazy races here in the past. 2 years ago was one where obviously Colton had multiple chances to win and then didn't end up winning with a couple of mistakes, and I believe he spun that year as well. And then last year he ended up getting it done. So he's been one of the favorites here in the past for sure. I don't know, it's always about just being consistent and just not making any mistakes, and a lot of the experienced drivers are best at that.
Well, he's picking experience. Let's see if we're both wrong. Maybe we'll both be right. I don't know. Thank you guys so much for watching. This has been David Land on YouTube. Subscribe for more motorsport content. Cheer for Braden Eves in the Indy Pro 2000, and we'll see you in the next video.